Okay, so I vividly remember the first times that I ever saw Les Paul and just how kind of mesmerizing it was to actually learn about that axe. And even though it would be literal years before I ever took music seriously, my 12-year-old self really only needed a couple of facts and a few sessions on Guitar Hero 3 to really kind of figure out how legendary Slash his iconic axe was. And that sentiment would carry on for years until I actually got my first Les Paul about 8 years later. The same feelings were not, however, held for Gibson's other iconic solid body guitar, and to put it as simply as possible, I didn't really get the SG. Now, why exactly was this? Well, you see, like a lot of other young guitar players, my first ever exposure to wanting to learn rock music came from opening up my laptop, logging into YouTube, and searching up Marty Schwartz Back in Black tutorial. And I really don't think I can properly iterate how many times I had this tab open, just desperately trying to figure out how to bend on the second fret of the G string without having my fingers fall out. But I was willing to do it. I was so willing to do it just because I knew that one day if I learned this riff, the other members of the guitar community might one day accept me as one of their own. But in doing all this, eventually I knew that it would be more than just about being able to play the song by myself or in a guitar store. I knew I would have to be able to actually play along to the track. So my next YouTube search, of course, had to be Back in Black by AC/DC. And within only a few moments of seeing that legendary 4:3 aspect ratio and a couple of muted downstrokes, the camera actually pans out and you're able to see the whole picture for the first time, and you notice. I mean, you really notice the Gibson SG. Like I was saying before, in the moment, I wasn't necessarily impressed. And don't get me wrong, Angus's playing, his tone, his energy, it's all legendary, and I could all feel that in the moment, but just looking at the guitar, it really didn't appeal to me like the Les Paul or the Strat did. And once I started to again take out my laptop and do my research on who the other SG players were, all I found, because probably I was bad at research at the time, were really hard rock players, like guys who used way more gain than Angus that I just wasn't ready for. And outside of those few legendary AC/DC riffs that I knew, I kind of decided in the moment, Angus is great, but this thing is never really going to be for me. But then something really interesting happened. You see, there was this new kid at college in my entrepreneurship class, and his dad had this wicked guitar collection. We just started chatting back and forth in class about guitars and about our interests, and he was like, you should come over to jam. So we start jamming like once a week. I mean, I'm having the time of my life. I have this new friend. He's just as into guitars as me. We can just get off campus, hang out and jam. And then he says something that I didn't know would change a lot of my thoughts. He says, Mike, I have this music teacher right now. He's a beast. He said he was the best guitar player in all of Pittsburgh, maybe one of, if not the best guitar player in all of Pennsylvania, like a jazz legend. And weirdly enough, he played an SG. I was like, yeah, I'm sure he's great, but if his name doesn't rhyme with Lemmy Hendrix or Lily Lan, why in the world would I ever want to learn from him? But then my friend did something interesting. He surprised me one day. He took me down to the music store where this dude worked. One of the nicest gifts anyone's ever given me. He goes, Michael, this is Mark Lucas, and today you'll be taking a lesson from him. And honestly, it became sort of like a movie moment. Even though I didn't know a lot about guitars at the time, I had only been playing for a year or two. There are certain people who you can tell have just mastered their craft on a different sort of level. And Mark was one of those guys, and he was playing jazz, he was playing rock, he was playing everything through this SG. I immediately went from, oh, this is only the rock and hard rock guitar, to this guitar can cover like a spectrum of genres. Like, it can do almost anything, can't it? And it wouldn't even necessarily stop there. I would eventually learn about Clapton's SG and Derek Trucks SG and literally all of the greats. And that's kind of how we got to where we are right now, where although year by year I've gained this continual respect for the SG, I've never actually owned one. Well, that is until about today, because we have a new friend. I'm ready, you're ready, it's go time. Let's see what we got here. Oh, well, that was anticlimactic, and it looks like all we have is foil. Gibson, you've done it again. Guys, I'm kidding. So let me formally introduce you to the Gibson SG 61 Standard with the vibrola. It's got the 60s burst spucker pickups, a 12-inch neck radius, and a 24 3/4-inch scale length. But I think the most interesting thing is the actual vibrola. In previous years, just knowing the SG players that I've listened to, like a Derek Trucks, like an Angus Young, they all play the regular 61 Standard. But more recently, I've seen some of my favorite modern players who might be influencing me, like Jake Kiska from Greta Van Fleet or Lindsey Jordan from Snail Mail, guys who use the 61 SG with Vibrola, and I've been getting a little jealous and really starting to come around to it. But what's important is not just telling you why I was wrong about this thing, but actually showing you. I want to show you just how insanely versatile this thing can actually be. I thought to myself, I have a couple different genre presets with the Helix, so let's see what we can do. We'll start really simple. Let's make sure this thing can do rock. Now let's try a little funk. All right, now let's try some blues. Let's get a little wacky. We'll try some worship music on an SG. Let's really challenge ourselves. Math rock. So, Mike, what's the point of all this? Why are we here? Well, here's the moral of the story. There are a lot of guitars out there that were only meant to do one thing, and I don't think that's a bad thing. You take, for example, the Gibson L5. There probably aren't a lot of math rock players who are really looking at that as their dream guitar, as their end-all be-all, even though I do think that that guitar does a lot more than people probably give it credit for. But on the complete other end of the spectrum, there are some guitars out there that people like me, unfortunately, label as only doing one thing really well. And in my case, it happens to be the Gibson SG. And those labels often don't just necessarily come from the guitar or playing the guitar. It comes from the associations that we make with specific bands or specific players or specific styles of music. Those things that can at times be really hard to break because of that instant connection that we made with that specific guitar. And finding out why more than just an Angus who I love, but a Derek Trucks or a Lindsey Jordan. I mean, I remember seeing Max Newman for the first time, the guitarist in the Main Squeeze, which might be the best YouTube cover band out there, if you ask me. I've seen them play anything from Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror to Donald Glover's Redbone, and on every single track, Max is using an SG, and it all sounds better than I could ever do. So it truly made me wonder why I have all these misconceptions. But I'm trying to learn, and I'm trying to grow, and I realize it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what you think. So let me know in the comments, what's the guitar that you had the most misconceptions about? What is the guitar that you thought there's no way that guitar is versatile at all? It probably stinks at doing anything but the thing it was specifically built for, but then you picked it up and you were like, wow, this thing could do jazz and rock and funk and new metal fusion jazz country rock. Let me know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. It's so fun to just finally be able to check out an SG, see what this thing can do. If you want to know anything more about the SG or any of the other gear that I used in this video, got it from the homies at Sweetwater. The links are in the description. Make sure to check it out. It's one of the best ways to support the channel if that's something you want to do, or if you're just curious about any of the gear that I used in this video, make sure to check out those links. Like and subscribe if you had a good day, and most importantly, most important of all, have a fantastic day.